We thought we had scored the ultimate travel loophole, an all-expenses-paid trip to a private luxury villa in Acapulco. No parents, no rules, just a week of elite parties and sun. But when we stepped off that plane, the luxury transport wasn't there, and the host who invited us didn't even exist. We realized too late that we weren't guests at a tropical getaway. We were inventory for a market that doesn't use money. If you get a DM that sounds too good to be true, delete it. Once you enter that villa, the only way out is in a box. It all started with a simple Instagram DM. My friend Lena was the one who received the message from a girl named Maya. Lena remembered her from high school, or at least she thought she did. Maya's profile was filled with photos of high-end PR events in Los Angeles, so when she offered us a social media sponsorship at a brand new villa in Acapulco, we didn't hesitate. The deal was perfect, a free week of luxury in exchange for a few tagged posts. We recruited our friends Marcus and Chloe, packed our best clothes, and headed for Mexico. The first crack in the dream appeared at the airport. We were told a private driver named Rico would be waiting with a placard. We stood in the sweltering heat for 40 minutes, scanning the crowd of tourists, but no one came. Lena tried to message Maya, but the messages wouldn't even go through. Just as we were about to call a taxi, a white van with heavily tinted windows pulled up. It wasn't a luxury SUV, it was a beat-up cargo van with peeling paint. A thin man in aviators stepped out and simply said, "Lena, get in." Relief overshadowed our suspicion. We piled into the back, only to find the interior was stripped bare, just metal flooring and 4 mismatched seats. There were no windows in the rear. As we pulled away, I checked my phone's GPS. We weren't heading toward the coast where the luxury resorts were. We were driving deep into the rugged, mountainous interior of Guerrero. "Is it just me, or are we going the wrong way?" Marcus whispered. I pounded on the plexiglass divider to talk to the driver, but he didn't even turn his head. He turned onto a jagged dirt road, the van swaying as we climbed higher into the hills. Finally, we passed through a massive iron gate topped with razor wire. There were no signs, no welcome banners, just a high concrete wall. The van stopped and the door slid open. The villa was there, just like the photos, a brutalist masterpiece of concrete and glass hanging over a cliff. But the photos had hidden the truth. Standing on the balcony above us were 3 men in tactical gear holding rifles. "Where is Maya?" Lena asked, her voice trembling. One of the armed men looked down with a cold, predatory smile. "Maya was just a name to get you here," he said in perfect English. "You are our guests now, and our guests never want to leave." The driver threw our luggage onto the gravel and shoved us toward the massive wooden front door. As we stepped inside, a heavy mechanical bolt clicked into place behind us. I looked at my phone, 0 bars of service. We weren't at a resort, we were in a high-tech fortress. We had been lured across the border not to party, but to be processed. The luxury of the villa was nothing more than a beautiful cage, and the real nightmare was about to begin. Inside, the villa was a cold labyrinth of polished concrete and expensive Italian furniture. But the luxury felt like a shroud. There were no servants, no music, and no parties, only the low hum of a central air system that smelled faintly of bleach. The man who had greeted us from the balcony, a sharp-featured European who introduced himself only as the curator, led us into a massive glass-walled study. "Phones on the table," he commanded. We obeyed, watching as a guard swept them into a lead-lined bag. "You were chosen for your specific profiles: physical health, lack of close family ties, and of course your social media reach. It makes the disappearance easier to script." He turned a computer monitor toward us. My heart stopped. It was a spreadsheet. Our names were listed in the left column. Next to Lena's name was a series of medical stats: blood type, kidney function, and estimated viability. Beside my name was a number, 450,000 ***. "What is this?" Chloe whispered, her voice breaking into a sob. "The market is very specific," the curator explained, as if he were discussing stocks. "Some buyers want youth for labor, others want parts. You, however, are a matched set, a premium collection." We were then led to our rooms. They were beautiful suites, but the doors were made of reinforced steel with no handles on the inside. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the villa's smart features took over. The glass windows transitioned into opaque black shields. We weren't just in a house, we were in a pressurized vault. I sat on the edge of the bed listening to the silence. Suddenly, a small vent in the wall clicked open. A tray of high-end catering was pushed through, followed by a small white pill. A voice over the intercom spoke, "Eat, sleep. The first investors arrive at 4:00 a.m. for the viewing. You must look your best." I looked at the food, then at the heavy steel door. We weren't guests, and we weren't just prisoners. We were products waiting for a buyer. The red glow of the digital clock on the nightstand felt like a countdown to our execution. 02:15 a.m. In less than 2 hours, the investors would arrive to inspect us like livestock. I could hear Lena sobbing through the thick concrete wall of the adjoining suite. The steel door was impassable, but as I paced the room, my eyes kept returning to the one architectural flaw in this high-tech fortress, the air conditioning vent. It was a wide, industrial-style slat located near the ceiling. I dragged the heavy designer desk across the floor, making as little noise as possible. Standing on top of it, I peered through the metal grates. The duct was large, built to cool a massive villa, and it seemed to connect all the guest suites before heading toward the central service area. "Lena, Marcus," I hissed, pressing my face against the wall near the vent. "Check your AC grates, we can move through the ducts." I used the edge of a metal belt buckle to unscrew the vent cover. It fell into my hands with a muffled asterisk thud. I hoisted myself up, the cold metal of the ducting biting into my skin. It was a tight squeeze smelling of dust and ozone. I crawled on my belly, the sound of my own breathing echoing in the narrow space. After a few yards, I reached the grate to Lena's room. "I'm here," she whispered, her face appearing behind the slats. "I can't get it open." "Kick it," I commanded. "The guards are at the front perimeter. They won't hear it over the wind outside." One sharp strike from her heel and the grate gave way. One by one, we gathered in the central junction of the ventilation system. Me, Lena, Marcus, and a trembling Chloe. We were covered in gray dust, our expensive viewing clothes ruined, but for the first time since we arrived, we had a sliver of hope. "The kitchen," Marcus whispered, pointing toward a downward slope in the duct. "If we get to the kitchen, there's a service lift for the food. It goes straight to the garage." We crawled in a line, the metal creaking beneath our weight. Below us, through the slats of various vents, we saw the villa's dark secrets. We passed over a room filled with server racks, the digital brain of the operation. Then we passed over a room that made Chloe gag. It was a medical suite, sterile and white, with surgical lights and a row of empty steel gurneys. Finally, we reached the kitchen. We peered through the final vent. The room was empty, illuminated only by the blue light of the industrial freezers. We dropped down one by one, landing silently on the tiled floor. "The lift is over there," I said, pointing to a small steel door in the wall. But as Marcus reached for the handle, the lights in the kitchen hummed to life, turning a blinding, clinical white. The intercom crackled with a sickeningly familiar voice. "Movement in Sector 4, the curator's voice echoed, devoid of emotion. "Exercise is good for the heart, it keeps the merchandise fresh, but playtime is over." The heavy steel shutters of the kitchen slammed shut, sealing the exits. From the ceiling, a faint hiss began. They weren't coming to catch us, they were gassing us. The hiss of the gas was barely audible, but the sweet, chemical scent filled the kitchen instantly. My head began to swim and Chloe collapsed to her knees. This wasn't a killing gas, they didn't want to damage the merchandise. It was a sedative, they wanted us unconscious and ready for shipping. "The freezer," Marcus shouted, his voice thick and slurred. He pointed to the massive walk-in industrial freezer. "The insulation, it's airtight." We scrambled inside, slamming the heavy insulated door just as the world began to turn gray. We huddled together in the freezing darkness, surrounded by hanging crates of high-end food. The cold was agonizing, but the air was clean. We waited for what felt like hours, listening to the muffled sounds of heavy boots on the kitchen tile outside. "They're gone," I whispered, peering through the small, circular, thick glass porthole in the door. The kitchen was empty, the gas cleared by the high-speed industrial fans. We stepped out, shivering violently. We knew the investors were due at 4:00 a.m. I looked at the clock, 03:50 a.m. We ran for the service lift, a small metal cage used for moving crates. We piled in and hit the basement butt. As the lift descended, we heard the sound of several heavy SUVs pulling into the gravel courtyard above. The buyers had arrived. The lift opened into the garage. The white van from the airport was parked there, the keys still in the ignition, a sign of the kidnappers' overconfidence. Marcus jumped into the driver's seat. "The gate is locked," Lena cried, pointing to the massive iron bars blocking the tunnel exit. "Hold on," Marcus roared. He slammed the van into reverse, floored the accelerator, and smashed through the back wall of the garage, not the gate, but the thin corrugated metal siding used for ventilation. The van plummeted 6 feet down a steep embankment, crashing through the jungle brush. We drove like madmen through the dark mountain passes with no headlights, terrified that the tactical teams would follow. We didn't stop until we saw the blue and red lights of a federal police checkpoint near the city limits. We thought we were safe. We told the officers everything. They took us to a secure station, gave us blankets, and promised to raid the villa. But as I sat in the back of the station, I saw a familiar face. It was the driver from the airport. He wasn't in handcuffs. He was wearing a police uniform, laughing with the captain. He looked at me, leaned in, and whispered, "The curator doesn't like losing a matched set. We'll see you at the next viewing." Before I could scream, the lights in the station went out. We ran. We didn't wait for the police. We stole a car from the impound lot and drove straight to the American consulate. We stayed there for 3 days until a private security firm hired by our parents extracted us. I'm back in the US now, but I never go online. I don't have a phone, because every morning at exactly 4:00 a.m. a blank email arrives in my inbox. The subject line is always the same: inventory restocked.